this is it from my side at this point. So I'm going to pass it over to Sean, and I'll see you on the other side.
Thanks so much, Blaise. Welcome, everybody. It's really interesting to see those statistics. It's good to see that quite a few of you have already experienced VRL. And for those of you who have not yet, hopefully this presentation gives you a little bit more of an insight onto the VRL services, the breadth of our services as well, because of course we're a national rail network. But let's kick off to the presentation. What I will be doing today is talking about a world obviously that's post-COVID. As everyone is very well aware, the whole world, the whole global travel industry is obviously experiencing a very deep challenge at the moment. VRL, of course, has been spending a lot of time on implementing social distancing, enhancing cleaning, various different procedures to ensure safe travel. Some of our services are still running because we are considered an essential service in Canada because VRL is a government crown corporation. But we do obviously expect once the COVID situation improves that we'll be getting back to our regular type of service where we don't necessarily have some of the restrictions that we have at the moment on board our trains. And of course, due to COVID, some of our services are suspended, including some of our most iconic services until November, the Canadian, and I believe the ocean as well. And some of our other long distance services also have some restrictions in place. So at this stage, that's until November this year, and then we'll just make a judgment at that point on how the global health picture is looking. But I've been encouraged to actually look at the statistics for Canada. And they did have quite a few challenges early on, of course, being quite close to the US, but that border is shut. And the case numbers per day have actually been trending down now for quite a while. So they're in a much improved situation compared to what they were. And so we're looking forward to some good news for Canada and of course for Australia and for global tourism and global travel. All right, let's kick on to the main part of the presentation. Okay, so VRL Canada. One of the things is, I guess, one of our key points of difference is we're a sleeper class rail service. And that means that for many of our long distance services, you have the opportunity to sleep on board in your own private cabin. Is one of the most popular ways of doing that. Of course, there is a great photo of our prestige class cabin, really amazing way of traveling. I mentioned before the VRL network. We are a national rail service, and you'll see some of our most popular services from the en routes that the international market chooses. Of course, our iconic Canadian service from Vancouver to Toronto, or returning the same way. Our Jasper to Prince Rupert service up in the west coast there. Our very iconic Winnipeg to Churchill service, where you head up to Churchill to see beluga whales, polar bears, even northern lights. So really great experience on the train up there. And of course, when you're in Churchill, all those amazing things. We have the ocean, which is on the east coast. Really quite a different experience, lots of water, lots of really beautiful buildings, and of course some great nature as well. And then we have our corridor service, which is linking up the major cities on the east coast, and we offer a business and an economy class service on the corridor. Okay, so starting off with our most famous and our most iconic service, which is the Canadian train. From Vancouver to Toronto, or from Toronto to Vancouver, or of course you can choose many combinations of different stops within those 2 points. I know, for example, Vancouver to Jasper is very, very popular. And as you can see there from the photo, it is really an amazing experience in terms of scenery. You'll see here on the slide, we've got some of the stops. So it's a 4-night, 4-day journey. It's is quite a long journey. You see 4,466 kilometers. We offer 3 different categories of service or classes of service. So our prestige class, which is our top service, our sleeper plus class, and of course our economy class as well. We offer, well, we did post pre-COVID anyway, 2 to 3 departures per week. And of course, we're looking to move back to that once things are improved. As I mentioned, our key point of difference is you do get to sleep on board. We also offer 1 complimentary stopover. And usually if you're, this is not something we promote too much, but usually if you're taking the full transcontinental journey from Vancouver to Toronto or Toronto to Vancouver, we do allow an extra stopover. So that's really great to be able, you might stop in Winnipeg and go off and go see the polar bears. Or you might decide to stop in Jasper and explore the park. Lots of really great options to actually use the train as a way of seeing Canada and exploring at a stop for a couple of days, then reboarding the train again and continue on your journey. And of course, we offer year-round departures as well, which is another key point of difference. There's some of the shots there, some great scenery. Now, I want to go through some of the experiences on board the Canadian, because this is one of the the great things I feel about train journeys in general, but in particular the VRL service, is that you have, if you're in sleeper plus class, for example, or a prestige class, you have your own cabin, but then during the daytime you're actually free to wander the train and experience all the different types of facilities we offer. One of them is the park car. This is at the end of the train. And this configuration is actually the Prestige Park Car. And it's a really nice place to gather and have a chat to people. There's always free flow coffee, usually some fruits and some juices set up on a little station in this car. It also has a dome upper carriage as well, connected to the park car. So you can spend some time in the lounge and then wander up to the dome car, which has 180-degree views. So it's a really great social atmosphere there. The park car also has a bar, and that's staffed by one of our bar attendants who can whip up some cocktails, pour you a nice wine, have a beer or so, and also they do some coffee and things like that as well. So the park car is a real communal social space for our Sleeper Plus and our Prestige Class customers only. In fact, Economy Class has their own cafe, and they also have several domes which they can enjoy. It's another visual there of the park car. And actually, I think this is actually moving along through our Prestige Class section, which you walk through on the way to the park car. As I mentioned before, we have domes throughout the train, and passengers are free to wander the train and find a comfy spot, grab a good book, or just stare out the window at the amazing landscapes that'll be unfolding. It's a really fun way of just, relaxing and just being able to, see different things. You can either side of the train. That's the other thing as well. If you had an allocated seat, you might only be seeing one side of the experience. But each day, or in the morning, you can be on one side. And, in the afternoon, you can swap over to the other side, or move to a whole different carriage entirely. It's up to you. That's another shot there. Someone enjoying a nice little coffee. I've already had one coffee this morning, so I think I'll be good for a little while. We also have the panorama car. Now, the panorama car is a little bit of a more advanced version of the dome car. We only offer this in the summer service because it does have so much glass, and we found that because winter in Canada is obviously quite cold. It was getting cold within this car during winter time, so we do only offer it during the summer periods. But yeah, a pretty amazing bit of scenery that you can see sitting in the panorama car. We also offer onboard entertainment. This is not something that's guaranteed for every journey, but it is really good because it's part of our traveling musician program. And essentially what that means is that well-known Canadian musicians who want to travel, across Canada, they get to play their music, or if they're perhaps a historian, they get to do their presentation on some Canadian history, and in return for that we give them free passage. So it's a sort of a great way for sort of win-win for them because they get free passage, win for VRL, and win for our passengers because they get to hear some great history or some great nature presentations or enjoy some great music. We also have our Skyline activity car, and this is a multi-purpose car. This has tables set up with board games available. We also have television monitors for movies. We also run a children's program in the Skyline activity car. If we do have a number of children on board, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But our staff look after the kids, and this offers also some little snacks and stuff for the kids as well. So it's a really great car just for, if you decide to look, these amazing landscapes of Canada is a bit too much, you want to go play a board game, or you want to read a book or watch a movie, we have the Skyline activity car there for you. And there's usually a dome carriage as well connected to the upper part of the Skyline activity car. Our dining car. Now, this is one thing that most people very much look forward to aboard the Canadian, and in fact, all our services, is the amazing meals on board. We do offer a really comprehensive and really delicious meal service. On the board the Canadian, it's breakfast, lunch and dinner. If you're traveling in Sleeper Plus or Prestige Class, it is included in the service. And we have onboard chefs. And the quality is what you would encounter in some of the top restaurants in the world. Really fine quality food. And I think we have an example there. 3 courses, quite often for dinner and often for lunch. Breakfast as well is a big meal. So it's actually good that sometimes the train is long because you eat so much aboard the train that it's good to get that exercise in. I know that several times I've been on the train, I've been tucking into these amazing meals and yeah, I just really felt the need to do a bit of exercise afterwards. But yeah, the food is fantastic aboard. On Sleeper Plus class, alcohol is not included, but you can purchase it. But for our Prestige class customers, we do offer alcohol included in the price of passage or train ticket. And usually also for our Prestige class customers, we do offer a small additional course as well. It's kind of like a bit of an aperitif. And it's just quite nice. It's still just a little bit of an added extra. Meals are usually allocated by our dining car steward. So basically what that means is there's two servings usually for dinner, and they will ring a bell or do a short announcement when 1 or 2 of the servings the people who are allocated to those need to come into the dining car. So the dining car is never crowded because we have that service, and you are allocated to a table, and it works really, really nice and smoothly. And of course, quite often you're offered a choice of the type of meal you want as well. Usually for most lunches and dinners and breakfast, there's a choice of a couple options which are served a la carte style. That's another shot there of the dining car. That's like a breakfast or a lunch scene going through the prairies. Going through our classes now on the Canadian, and as I go through the classes, is quite a bit of similarity between some of our other train services and the Canadian. So it all kind of does have the relevance, for example, for the ocean and some of our other services. So we have economy class, very comfortable service. We don't sell a lot of that out of the Australian market because people who are traveling, from international destinations do like to have their own cabin and have those, their meals included and things like that. So economy class, you'll see it's kind of like an older style business class seat. So it's still quite comfortable. And a lot of Canadians use this to get from A to B. We have a cafe purchase meals. And of course, they also have a dome car as well with those 180-degree windows. Sleeper Plus class is our most popular class within Australia. As I mentioned before, have these amazing chef-prepared meals. We have all-day coffee, juice, tea, coffees, cookies. Cookies are very good. I can vouch for those. And fruit offered in strategic sort of food and drink stations throughout the train. So you don't just have to wait for breakfast, lunch or dinner. You can partake throughout the day if you choose. And also during the night, we usually have a food and coffee tea station operating as well. So if you want a midnight snack, that's also possible. We have that great park car lounge, which I showcased before. We have our domes, which are exclusive to the Sleeper Plus and Prestige Class customers, the Panorama car in summer, and of course the Skyline activity car. One thing I should mention, what we do is we tend to, add, depending on how busy the train is. So for example, sometimes you might find there's 2 Skyline activity cars, or there might be, an extra passenger car, or a sleeper plus car or something like that. Just depending on how busy the train is, we add and subtract carriages as we go along. One of the key points of Sleeper Plus is of course we have showers and toilets in each car. Within everyone's cabin, there's a toilet and a wash basin. Showers are within the actual car itself, but in reality, there's no queues for any showers or anything like that, or at least I've never encountered them, and I've never heard anyone of encountering them. And the showers are self-contained, so basically you go into the shower, you close the door, and there's a changing area as well. So you go into the changing area, close the door, and secure it with a little lock, and then no one else is in there. So you don't share a shower, or share a shower facility with anybody. It's all private that way. But of course, other people will use it after you've finished and things like that. But it's cleaned very, very regularly, because each car has its own dedicated staff member who will look after things. In Sleeper Plus, we do have a number of different subcategories. So berth, cabin for 2, cabin for 1. And I'll just go through those briefly now. So cabin for 2 is our most popular configuration. That is ideal for 2 people, has a great picture window where you can relax. It has a wash basin, has its own separate toilet. As you can see, there's a door there to the toilet there. Lots of great mirrors, some great storage space for your personal luggage. The sort of more significant luggage, we do actually put in a baggage car, but a couple backpacks and things like that, or a couple of very, very small suitcases work well for the in-cabin luggage. And of course, you can see there for during the day, we have the day configuration. And then at nighttime, we actually convert to a nighttime configuration. Or if you choose, you can actually have the night configuration there permanently. And that's actually when I travel on the train. That's what I prefer, because I like to be able to go to the bunk and have a bit of an afternoon snooze whenever I please. So it actually just asks your attendant and to say, look, hey, I'd prefer to have the beds down all the time. And there's an upper, so you can see an upper and lower berth, and there's also a little ladder that you can use to get up and back. One thing I should also mention is we also offer what's called a family suite. That family suite is 2 cabin for 2s connected together, and you'll see that white wall beyond the bed. That white wall actually is removed. So it's essentially almost like 2 double beds connected to each other. So it's great. You have the parents on the lower and the kids on the top, or vice versa. There is going to be a small gap between the bunks, but no, it does work pretty well. And of course, there's also 2 toilets and 2 wash basins and things like that. So it's really good. And of course, you've got an amazing picture window. And that's one of the great experiences of the Canadians, just waking up in the morning and seeing the landscapes. In the wintertime, it's snow. During the summertime, it's some really great forested mountains. Really amazing to wake up aboard the train. We also offer our single cabin, which is a great choice for people who are traveling solo, or if perhaps they're less mobile and they're a little bit concerned about getting onto that upper berth. They can choose the single cabin. It actually has the biggest bed aboard the Sleeper Plus class. So it's actually a really great choice. There's also a toilet in the single cabin. It is a little bit more challenging to reach there, because you do need to kind of lift a few things to actually access the toilet there. So, but there's also a toilet in the car as well. So if you don't wish to use the toilet in your single cabin, you can use the one in the car as well. We also offer a berth service, which is kind of like our entry-level experience to the Sleeper Plus. And berth is, as those photos described, it's not an actual private cabin, but we do offer heavy curtains. And during the day, it actually converts to sort of a cafe-style lounge suite and things like that. In practice, because these berths are at the very end of the Sleeper Plus section, during the night time, there's no one wandering down those corridors. So you actually do get a very restful night's sleep with minimal, interruptions and things like that. We have our own baggage car, as I mentioned. This is all for the main luggage, but we do allow small items, just personal changes of clothes and things like that, and for people to carry in their cabin. And we do provide towels and toiletries and soaps and things like that. All the basic necessities in each cabin as well for our passengers' comfort. During the winter time, we offer the snow train service, and I probably should speed up a bit. I made a joke about Blazy. Blaze was saying to me, "Oh, don't go over." So I'm actually I'm going a little bit slow. Yeah, so we have the snow train, and that is out in winter time. It's essentially the Canadian, but of course it's during winter, and I've got the amazing winter landscapes there. It's actually my favorite experience aboard the Canadian. It's also great because it's not as many people choose to take the Canadian during the winter time. So it means that you get your choice of where exactly you want to sit, and you go into the park car, and there might only be 2 or 3 people in the park car lounge with you. So it's really nice, and I love just waking up and seeing the snow. It's fantastic. So really recommended. Have a look at a winter option. Aboard the Canadian, we have our prestige class, and this is our highest level of service and our greatest level of comfort. As you can see, they're really beautiful cabin interior. We offer a full double bed, which is a really amazing luxury aboard a train. There's a bathroom with toilet and shower included in each cabin. As I mentioned before, alcoholic beverages are included. We also provide a complete concierge service, which is sort of just a little bit of a step up from our cabin attendance service, which we provide in each car for the Sleeper Plus class customers. It's another shot there of some of the configurations aboard Prestige class. You can see the day configuration cabin, and of course during the night time, the day section converts to that really nice double bed. There's a shot of the bathroom there. Really nice wood paneled interiors, really special experience. Now moving on to some of our other train services now. We do offer the Jasper to Prince Rupert service via Prince George. That's a 2-day journey. And Blaze was actually just telling me earlier that he experienced that and had a really amazing time. And he said it's a bit of an undiscovered train route, so at least by the Australian market. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to keep in mind for your customers, for your clients, and for yourselves if you're traveling to Canada. Now we do offer a bit of a slightly different type of service aboard the Jasper to Prince Rupert, and it is called touring class. And I actually have a photo of, and that's offered from June to September. So that's an important point. Essentially, that's a panoramic car, but we don't actually offer the dining car aboard this service. And so the meals are actually at your seat. And the other major difference is that we also don't have sleeping on board. So the train will actually stop at Prince George, and people will get off and they'll go to hotel accommodation, and then they'll come back the next morning. And the hotel accommodation does need to be booked by you. It's not something we actually book as part of the service, so that's also important to note. Some of the visuals you can see there, some of the animals, including bears, but luckily you're in trains, so there's no worries there. We also offer our ocean service. Our ocean service is three times a week. That does offer economy or Sleeper Plus class services, very similar to what you get aboard the Canadian. As you can see there, the Sleeper Plus look and feel is just a little bit different, a few different colors and so forth. But yeah, quite similar in terms of the service offering. And of course that goes on our East Coast, and that's an overnight journey. It's another visual there. We offer our corridor services, and these are our kind of commuter type services between the major cities on the East Coast. And we do offer Wi-Fi on board these services. And actually that's something I should have pointed out earlier. Aboard the Canadian and some of our other long distance services, we don't offer Wi-Fi essentially because we are traveling through remote areas and we can't get a reliable signal for for our guests, but we do offer free Wi-Fi at our stations. So quite often people will pull up at the station, and then there'll be an opportunity to connect to the internet, and free of charge, of course, and check emails and correspond with people and all these different types of things. Some of the stopovers on the trains are quite short. Others can be a bit longer. I know, for example, on the Canadian Winnipeg, sometimes that's a several hour stop, sometimes even half a day stop. It just depends on how much provisions they need to load aboard of the train, how the train's going, all sorts of things. So if there actually is a longer stop in Winnipeg aboard the Canadian, sometimes organise, a short tour of the town and things like that. So that'll be organised by the activity coordinators aboard the train. Okay, back to the corridor services. So we offer economy class and business class. Really great way to experience traveling along the East Coast, and I actually prefer it to flying. It's by the time you include traveling to an airport, checking in, all these different types of things, the train is actually I won't say it's faster, but it's not that much slower. It's a really great way of seeing Canada and getting to a destination on the East Coast in quite a speedy fashion, and it's so relaxing. That's what I really like. And I've got these are just some personal photographs that I took. So we also offer, as part of our Wi-Fi service, you can connect your iPad or your laptop or whatever to our onboard entertainment system. And this is only offered aboard on board the corridor services, I should say. And yeah, there's various news programs and movies and all that sort of stuff available. We also, of course, offer a meal service. And as you can see, there's it's kind of like like an airline style food, but it's actually pretty tasty. And I really enjoyed it, and offer a glass of wine as well. This is our business class service, which I'm showing a photograph of. And I would recommend that to your client. It's actually not that expensive. It's definitely cheaper than flying. So it's a really good option and really comfortable seats. Okay, Winnipeg to Churchill service. This is one of my favorite services because you get to go to Churchill and potentially see polar bears or beluga whales. And it's a real wilderness route. We offer our Sleeper Plus class and our Economy class. It's a 2-day, 2-night service. And it's really quite exciting. And many people have, just had the opportunity to start doing this train service again because we had some problems with flooding and so forth. And it's only recently the line has reopened. So it's actually quite exciting that people will be able to travel up to Churchill by train again. And as I mentioned, we've got the beluga whale watching, June, July up in Churchill, and polar bears, October to November. So really quite exciting and great attractions to visit. Some more amazing scenery there in Churchill. And of course, there's an opportunity to see the Northern Lights if you're very lucky. So it's a trifecta of experiences up in Churchill. All right, I know I have gone a couple minutes over, so apologies, Blaze, but that's the end of the presentation. We might, probably Blaze will probably jump in, but we'll probably take some questions if we still have time.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Sean. That was actually pretty good timing. I thought you were actually going to go a bit more over than just 2 minutes. And we usually,
Me too, actually.
yeah, so that's great work there. And we do actually take a bit of extra time for questions. So that's all good and fine. And I will launch our quiz at the same time as well. So just bear with me. So that's going to come up on your screens right now. There we go. And while you're doing the quiz, we'll answer any questions that have come up. I've already answered a couple that have come throughout the webinar. There's one that I think is actually a really good question from Sarah. Let's see. This presentation is a real eye-opener for me. I had no idea that the VRL was so lovely. The entertainment, park car, dining standard looks fab. And we didn't pay Sarah to say that. I was not expecting to see the glass dome cars also. And the question is, what does the Rocky Mountaineer offer that you don't, or vice versa, that differentiates your products other than seasonality of service?
Look, our key difference.
Do you want to, yeah.
Yeah, and if you feel like jumping in as well, Blaze, in this, from my perspective, the key point of difference is the Rocky Mountaineer offers a hotel accommodation style at the end of each day. So you go to a really nice hotel and experience that, and then the next morning you'll come back and board the Rocky Mountaineer again. Whereas the Canadian and most of our long distance services, you sleep on board. So we actually consider this highlight of the VRL service in that you actually get to have your own cabin, wake up, and see a new landscape unfolding before you. So for me, that's a really great point of difference and one of our key selling points, I think, for VRL.
Yep. I would just add that, I mean, they're two quite different products. I think with there's also a difference in the way you kind of interact with the train. With Rocky Mountaineer, you're kind of at your seat for the most of the time. So you don't really have that sort of onboard experience that you have with Via, where you're like more free to move around the cars and explore different features and interact with other passengers a bit more. So I think that social component is it's much stronger on board Via Rail. Plus, of course, Via Rail has a lot more services around different areas of the country. So if you can go beyond just the Rockies, whereas Rocky Mountaineer, obviously it's only in one area. So I think they both have their unique advantages and disadvantages. Also, I think with Via, you just have like a lot of different price points as well, because there's different classes. And oftentimes you can get a pretty good quality service for a bit lower price than Rocky, because Rocky is definitely more on a high end, but the difference is not necessarily that significant. I fairly enjoyed, like, Sleeper Plus is a very, very comfortable experience on board it for a much lower price in the same area, so to speak. So it's really depending on your clients, and I think, you know, if they have a chance, they can always do both. For example, they can take Vancouver to Jasper on board the Rocky, and then maybe go from Jasper to Prince Rupert on board Via, or vice versa. There's a lot of different options there. Okay, question from Wendy. Some overnight European trains can be quite warm. Are you able to have cool air in sleepers during winter?
I've traveled in winter, and I found the temperature really good. We have a really nice comforter or doona, which they provide. And yeah, I never really had too much of an issue. I don't remember actually ever being, you know, hot, and I don't really, so they kept it pretty well for me. I haven't heard that comment before about the difference in temperature. So look, that may be a case in some periods of time, but yeah, I haven't experienced it personally, and I haven't heard too much about it. So usually the person in charge of the train does a pretty good job of keeping the temperature at a reasonable level. And I think it helps that, like, when the carriages were constructed, they put a lot of effort into the insulation. So the windows and just all the interior paneling and exteriors and exterior work is very, very good for insulation. So yeah, I think that does really help. And of course, I mentioned before, this is one of the reasons why we don't offer the panorama car during the winter time, just because it doesn't offer that level of insulation that the rest of our carriages do offer.
I was traveling in September, so it was already a little bit cold outside, but I find it quite comfortable. I don't really recall any issues with that at that time. A question from Sarah: are there staff on the Via Rail that give talks, information on what you're passing by?
Yeah, so we each carriage has its own attendant, who is usually a very friendly person, and they'll be happy to provide information about where you're traveling to and so forth. We also have various brochures and things like that that offer a bit more of detail on the journey. And as I mentioned before, we do also have our traveling musician and also sometimes traveling historians who are on board. It's quite often more the musicians than historians. But yeah, you may be fortunate and find a historian on board who'd be able to give a great presentation on, you know, what you're seeing as the landscape's unfolding, and of course, you know, and various wildlife and things like that you might see on the way. But yeah, definitely, all our staff are very friendly, and also very informed about, you know, the towns and the landscapes that we're traveling through. And there'll also be onboard announcements periodically, which talk about a scenic point or an upcoming stop and so forth. I mean, for example, some of the real scenic highlights as we go through the Rocky Mountains, the train will actually slow down or even stop, so people can take photographs and things like that. So yeah, we're very much aware of, you know, some of these amazing things that we're actually seeing as we go on board the train, and making sure that all the guests and passengers are, you know, have the opportunity to go and experience that and get their cameras ready and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. When I was on the Canadian, I think they even had scheduled talks on certain topics as well in the common areas. So that was also a thing. And on the Skeena train, which is the Jasper to Prince Rupert one, you actually get a bit of brochure with all the mile markers that indicate where some of the interesting spots are, which was really useful because you can because the mile markers are, you can keep following along to see where you are exactly on the map. And then it will say, okay, at mile marker 15, you're going to have this and this and this on the left-hand side. So even if you don't have direct commentary, you can use that guide to pretty much see everything that there's to see. So that was a pretty good experience and very, very amazing. So that whole service, as Sean mentioned, I've been on it and it was really, really amazing. Yep. Question from Shelley. Is the timetable capped too, or does the train have to give way to freight trains?
Unfortunately, it does have to give way to freight trains. It's always been one of the biggest challenges for VRL in that the actual freight company owns the tracks. So they're the ones who actually get to manage the schedule. However, we have done a lot of work on this because we did have really, significant challenges a couple of years ago with the train being delayed because of having to pull alongside for freight. So we spent a lot of time with CN, which is the company that runs all the freight and owns the tracks. And we think that we've now come to a really good agreement with them to really minimize any sort of delays. And so on-time performance is hugely improved. I think we're around 94%, 95% or something like that now, compared to where it was a couple of years ago, where we really had some big challenges with, on-time performance and delays and things like that. So yeah, that's really been improved now. So really happy to announce that and say that. So very good question.
Yeah, perfect. But definitely don't schedule your flight an hour after arrival, yeah? If you're going across the entire country.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, Blaze. We do say to people that don't schedule any activity for the day you're due to arrive. Or even I would also say don't schedule an international flight for the very next morning, just because you don't know, things can happen. Our on-time performance is much improved, but yeah, you don't want to have to reschedule a flight because of something that's occurred and, the train is running late or whatever it might be. So yeah, perfect opportunity once you arrive in the destination to go on a couple of tours and things like that for a day or so.
And I think it's also important to point out that the corridor service is not subject to delays as much as the other services. So because it's much more a frequent service and also shorter distances. So the delays mostly affect the long services like the Canadian. I know the Skina's a bit affected by that because it's sharing the tracks with the freight, but not the corridor service, right? Is that correct, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we are improving it all the time, not only the negotiation with CN, but also investing in various ways. So there's not just a single track, there's an ability to bypass and things like that. So there's a lot of investment ongoing to try and minimize any delays and things like that.
Yep, perfect. There was a question from Ed about when the beluga whale season was on, and that was June, July, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the key season for beluga whales. You might get a little bit either side, but yeah, it's actually quite specific. Up in Manitoba and Churchill, those seasons, the polar bears you can sometimes see in sort of September, but it's usually October, November is the key point where they're actually gathering to cross onto the bay. So yeah, it's unfortunately for whatever reason, the earlier months in the year don't seem to get the love in Churchill. It's very much from June, July onwards.
Perfect. A question from Lynn. If wanting to organize a group, can you hold cabins for a period of time while promoting the tour?
That's something we could look at on a case-by-case basis, and also depend very much on the season as well. Summer, we're usually very busy, so you may need to, if you wanted to make a group booking, allocate that and make deposits and things like that earlier. Whereas winter, there may be some more flexibility, but we do definitely offer some great services for groups, and just to reach out to me, or you can reach out to service@vrl.ca and we'll be able to organize that for you.
Perfect. A question from Ed about the protests, if they've subsided now, and if you think that they will affect the services post-COVID. Any sort of insight on
Yeah,
that?
look,
Yeah.
the protests that did occur have subsided now, which is great news. But we do actually, I'm actually just hearing just very recently that there's another small protest that's, or at least it's being discussed. There may be a protest on the Winnipeg to Churchill route, actually because of COVID, because they're opening up that route, and some people are concerned about visitors spreading COVID on the train and affecting remote communities and things like that. So that's a bit of a challenge at the moment, but it's not going to affect any international visitors, because obviously, especially from Australia, you can't travel internationally yet. So I do feel that the initial protest, which occurred I think in January, over some industrial disputes and some land and some concerns of First Nations and things like that, those challenges were solved, which is great. And yeah, I don't anticipate that to occur in the future, post-COVID, but I mean, it's, the world is a dynamic place, so, who knows, but so far so good in terms of those challenges. We seem to have overcome them.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we're pretty much gone through all the questions. So thank you for everyone for joining today. I think it was a really wonderful trip through Canada. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I learned a lot of new things as well, even though I've done some of the services. So hopefully this is something that you'll keep in mind for next time when clients are going to Canada, because it's a pretty good option to travel around the country from east to west. Really amazing opportunity. I'll end the poll now. So it does look like that most of you have finished the quiz. So thank you for that. We'll send up a follow-up email with all the details, with links to our website, to all the information, maps, and so on. So you'll be able to explore further. And I'm hoping you're going to be joining us next Tuesday when we're going to be traveling around France. It's actually Bastille Day, so it's very appropriate that we're doing a French presentation on Bastille Day. Perfect. Sean, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, just really to thank everyone for coming with us on our sort of virtual journey through VRL this morning. I hope you found the presentation informative and learned a little bit about some of the VRL services, because we do have a lot to offer. And I think, from the Australian market, we're definitely, really excited to see people embracing VRL and just some of the amazing experiences aboard our trains.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you, Elaine, Tracy, Jenny, Wendy, Michelle, Carolyn, Stacy, everybody that's been sending out through comments in chat. And of course, everybody else that I didn't mention. And hope I'll see you next Tuesday for a French presentation. Have a good one and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.